I just want to touch on that thing of coming out. I remember that of my ex saying to me when I was talking about drinking, like, and I was talking to the kids about alcohol, and I remember him saying, like, don't listen to her, she's a hypocrite, and me being cut deep, right?
Hello and welcome back to Recovery and the Rest. This is episode 5. The podcast is out in the world now, so we've had to be doing lots of spoiler alerts around the change in the title because it we started with, see, I can't even remember.
The Rambling podcast, which just came from our conversations, right? Our voice notes of rambling with each other.
That's right. And then I kept on calling it the Wandering Podcast because for some in my neurodiverse brain, I kept on thinking about walking.
Rambling and walking. Yeah,
Yeah.
wandering.
Um,
Your
and
wandering
then,
mind took you to the Wandering podcast.
yeah. And then we realized that recovery and the rest is actually what we are talking about, and surprisingly, there are a lot of the rambling podcasts out there.
There are, yeah. There's a few recovery in the rest, but
Is there?
there is, but not anywhere near as many.
Gosh.
Not us.
No. So yeah, how are you doing, Ellen?
I'm good, Mandy. I'm good. I would just say, what is it? A couple of weeks. Feels like a couple of weeks since we last chatted.
Mm.
10 days. So I've been away. Um, oh, I went to see Alanis Morissette in concert, which was brilliant. One of the things I love. It was, in fact, it was a year to the day, I think, that we went to see Robbie Williams together
Oh, was it?
in England. So, yeah, good old gig. Sober is so much nicer to come away with the memories of a sober gig.
Yeah.
Um, and in fact, it was in Carcassonne, right in the old walled town of
Oh,
Carcassonne, in
beautiful.
the old amphitheatre there. So really, really lovely and very different experience. Not everybody drinking like
Mm.
not like Robbie Williams, you remember?
Robbie Williams. And it was like a 90s kind of middle-aged day out, which was with some quite catastrophic sort of casualties by the end of the evening.
Yeah.
Amazing gig. The only I did feel a little when he talked about his recovery and he was kind of sat on a chair and talked about his experiences, and there were a few people that were just like, well, get on with it kind of thing. And I was like, this
Yeah.
is the most important bit.
Yeah, it really, I think as well, us doing the work that we do, literally the work in our sobriety and the work around with clients, it's such a kind of a vulnerable, we know the strength in that vulnerability of him sitting there and opening up about his addictions
Yeah.
and for people to cut him down. And there was like people wearing t-shirts, remember saying like just do drugs or something, Robbie, and all those kind of things, which
I don't remember
I
that.
get it, but yeah, when somebody is so open about their recovery process, it's in my ideal world, everybody would be holding space for them,
Yeah.
right? And even with Alanis Morissette, she has a brilliant song called "The Reasons I Drink." And in fact, we're going to talk a little bit about kind of cross addictions today. And she talks in that song about the reason she drinks, the reason she eats, the reason she buys Lamborghinis, like, and it just was a beautifully sung song, and the words really were like, ah, oh, this is amazing. So yeah, very different experience to Robbie.
Mm.
Um,
Did she sound good then?
she was mate. I was really worried actually. I love Alanis Morissette, but I was thinking 2 hours, she might kind of grate on me a little. But it was really intimate, 3,000 people, and her voice is superb.
Mm.
And yeah, really, really great.
Yeah,
So
she sounded good at Glastonbury, I thought so. I
yeah.
have some intel on Robbie Williams because one of my friends that I lived with at university, she works for FIFA, and Robbie has done the new World Cup song. So he was at the closing ceremony of the Club World Cup, which has just happened in America, and she was his like lead like contact basically. So
Okay.
the whole time that he was at the venue, she was looking after him. So she was in the green room with him, and So I have a picture of them together, but he is really nice, she said. So I was really happy. She said he's really down to earth, really chill, like funny, and just, yeah, not like precious at all. So, I mean, don't think he was possibly like that a few years ago, but she said,
No,
so
humble.
I was quite pleased. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so nice. So you've been on holiday down to Spain, you said.
Went down to Spain. Again, interesting. I'm always looking at things through a sober lens, right? And I went with my cousin and the kids, and yeah, just interesting looking at the shift in culture. As soon as you cross that border from France into Spain, and we were just across the border in the mountains, um, and looking at the way people eat, but yeah, looking at the way that people drink was interesting. A huge amount of alcohol, but really lovely to see a huge amount of alcohol-free beer everywhere. Everywhere I went, and we were not in a touristy town, but alcohol-free beer on tap in places. So for me, I do like it, the odd alcohol-free beer, especially when on holiday. So it was really nice that there was that option there.
Yeah, I think Spain has it pretty much everywhere I've ever been in Spain, there's been at
Yeah.
least one alcohol-free beer. Very good, very
What
good.
about you? What have you been up to?
Um, nothing nothing that interesting, I don't think. I can't nothing's coming to mind, so
You're getting
I
ready to
think
go off to the UK next week.
it's this week. I
Oh,
go
this week, yes,
tomorrow.
it's tomorrow. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
should know that.
So Latitude Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Um, yeah, I've just been kind of working really, and haven't been sleeping very well. Nothing very nothing's been going on particularly. Um, just been like praying that it doesn't rain all weekend at Latitude, which I don't think it's going to. So far, it's got like Saturday, Sunday sunny, and then a bit of rain both sides. So we'll see.
Uh, how are you feeling about going the lead up? We talked last week about you being proactive in managing
Mm.
your stress levels and fibromyalgia symptoms um, going into it.
Yeah. I am, I think, just at a place of acceptance of what it will be, and um, that I won't ever do it in this way again. You know, if I do go again, I definitely will have to stay and get an Airbnb and kind of protect my sleep more. Um, yeah, it is. Yeah, I've kind of come to a place of it is what it is, and it will be what it will be.
Yeah.
So.
Tell me a bit about Latitude. What are you doing there? You're talking panel there, right?
Yeah, so we've got three panels. Friday is Stories of Hope. So we've got a girl called Issy Hawkins, who's also an alcohol change ambassador.
Hmm.
She's quite kind of big on TikTok. She's quite young. She's sharing her story, as is Brandon Block, he's a DJ, you know, he's a big DJ in the
Yeah.
90s, and he's the ambassador for Smart Recovery.
Okay.
So, and then on Saturday, we've got a Sober Curious panel with Richard Piper, who's the CEO of Alcohol Change. Jamie Lee Grace is coming, and Yasmin Spark, who is she has a alcohol-free drinks company.
Okay.
And Sunday is kind of finding calm in chaos. So, well, it's quite a practical session. So, well-being tools. Um, you're testing my memory here with Corinne, who is she's the co-founder of the Zen Project, which runs that area at Latitude. And a girl called Maz, who's a psychotherapist, and a yoga teacher called, gosh, we've done so well. It will come back to me. She's just been added, so that's why. yeah, coming to do some practical tools. And then I've organised Rich Piper to do two kind of alcohol and use sessions. And also we've got a recovery tent, which this year we've got AA, NA, and smart recovery meetings. So there's like a safe space for people. And there's always someone in that tent to just go and chat with if people are feeling overwhelmed. You don't have to be kind of in any program. You could just go and chill, and there's lots of nice cushions and just have a cup of tea and take some time out. And yeah, so it's trying to make the festival accessible for people, whatever their um, drinking might look like or their change journey, to sort of open that door to conversation really and create safe places for them to, to be
Yeah,
able to
it's
chill.
a fantastic resource to have. I mean, the link in our brains between, yeah, gigs, festivals, um, being actually unsafe spaces, right? Like unsafe in terms of the amount of alcohol use, the amount of drug use
Yeah.
in those places. Um, so being able to have that resource there.
Yeah, no, it's really cool. And I really enjoy working with Corinne and Kay. So they're the Zen projects. It's they have a couple of old yellow American school buses, and they kind of take them around local authorities, universities and things, and do like Zen in 10. They both have their own kind of stories of poor mental health, and they kind of are both yoga teachers and breath work, and have various tools in their toolbook that they can use, and they are trying to make kind of mental well-being as accessible as possible to people. So yeah, it's a cool little project. So
Yeah,
yeah, I like to do it for sure, but the impact is for someone with fibromyalgia it's pretty extreme.
yeah, for sure, for sure. Okay, so today we're talking a little bit kind of, we wanted to talk about the recovery in hindsight, right? I think that's the thing as we get further into sobriety, realizing that sobriety isn't just a case of removing alcohol. That's always been my prime, like, my stake in the ground of I will not drink. Um, my sobriety is about alcohol, but the further I get into it, the more I can see that my reward pathway in my brain has always been a little bit skewed. But I don't know for what reason. That's a big question, I feel like, to answer. But certainly that my behaviors going forward after stopping drinking have been quite all or nothing, um,
Mm.
and how I manage that. So, Mandy, tell me a little bit about your experience in hindsight as you move through your sobriety, as you get further into this. Um,
Yeah, it's quite interesting. I had a kind of a bit of a light bulb moment a couple of days ago. I was watching, so we decided to watch a film with my daughter, who's like 18, nearly 19. And it was like 2.5 hours long, and she'd kind of, prepped, are we going to have time to watch this whole film? And he was like, I think so, I think it will work. And then obviously things happen, right? There was a massive thunderstorm, so we had to go outside and like clear loads of stuff. Then my son, who's on holiday, phoned, so so things got later. Um, and she was working the next day. She's got really, really long hair. She needed to have a shower and wash her hair. Um, and it was about 11:15. So, and we had an hour and a half to go on the film. So I just like called it, and I was like, look, this isn't going to work. We're going to have to finish it tomorrow. She was really annoyed, which which is totally fair enough. The goalposts had changed, and she wasn't happy about that. But the realization that I had was, when you're that age and your brain isn't fully developed
yeah,
to understand kind of consequences, your brain doesn't fully develop until you're about 23, I think, as neuroscience sort of says it. So in that, you're still, at 18, very dopamine led. So it's like, I want this and I want this now. So, there was no kind of cognitive functioning of like, breaking this down of like, this is going to have an impact on this. This is going to
Yeah.
mean I'm going to go to bed at 2 in the morning. This is going to mean it's going to, like, I'm not going to be able to get up to go to work in the morning and I'm going to be really exhausted. It was just like, I am so annoyed,
Yeah.
that I can't do the thing that I want to do right now.
Yeah.
And I was observing it and I thought, God, I'm like that all the time. Um, and, that kind of self-sabotage thing of like, kind of my desire to do something right in that moment overriding my kind of cognitive knowledge that that is not a good choice for me.
Yeah.
So I was like, right, that's really interesting because I had a lot of trauma when I was a teenager. Um, I started drinking and doing drugs when I was a teenager. It is often said that you kind of get stuck, your brain kind of gets
Arrested
stuck.
development.
Yeah,
Right? Yeah, I think in Huberman Lab around alcohol, he talks about the impact of us drinking before the age of 25. I think he says,
right.
yeah, that we have this arrested development of that midbrain and the
Yeah.
rational.
So it was really interesting because it was like, okay, so that means that when I'm not fully in my adult,
Mhm.
I am going to seek out, dopamine-led behaviors regardless of the kind of,
Okay.
yeah. Um, so it kind of made me think about how important it is to be, well rested, being able to be in the kind of best state to kind of access your kind of adult logical prefrontal cortex brain. Um, and just and not in a shame way or anything like that, but just with huge curiosity of like, okay, so that's another skill, another tool that I've now got to go, okay, so why were you scrolling on your phone like rather than going to sleep? Why were you, I
Yeah.
mean, I with fibro, there's a lot of written about diet and nutrition. I'm, 95% gluten free, I'd say, but there's some days where I'm like, well, I just want pizza,
Yeah.
and I just will do something that's going to impact me, because that, for whatever reason, that teenage part of me is just in the driving seat at that point, and wants what it wants.
Yeah.
Um, so to answer your question, I mean, um, I think when I took away drinking, in retrospect, the things that I understood were um, I had a lot of recovery to do around relationships with people, about how that youngest part of me felt like they were going to miss out, or they weren't good enough, or they needed to prove themselves,
Hmm.
um, and that my worth was tied up in being a good person and putting other people first. So a lot of work around codependency. Um, my understanding was that I seeked validation from work, from achievements, from social media, from being seen. Um, and it's so interesting because it's like there was obviously again part of me that was just like really wanted to be heard, you know.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't have any shame about any of this, but it's just information.
Yeah.
Um, Definitely stuff around, food, around never feel it. I mean, it all stems from not enoughness, you know, so never feeling full enough, so always panicking around. I mean, we've done trips together to Barbary, right? And I'm like, but I haven't eaten, like, just this fear that I might be hungry,
Yeah.
and that worry about that, I have a fear around that I might need the toilet, right? It's something I'm working in hypnotherapy around at the moment. Like, it is so challenging in my life that I like. go to bed and
Yeah,
think, I need a wee. I got to
yeah,
go for a wee. I get
yeah,
up, go for a wee. Oh, but I might need an like it's all this fear-based stuff.
yeah.
Um, yeah, I think I think that's that's enough. What about you?
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on something that you said about like being in that adult brain, because that tool of HALT, right, that we use in the early days of sobriety, am I hungry, am I angry, am I lonely, am I tired? That's something I still draw on now. Um, and I always think of that in terms of being a mum. When you're a mum and you can hear other people's babies cry, and you kind of go, oh, that's a hungry cry, or oh, that's a tired cry. They need to put that baby for a nap. I still use that for me. Like if I'm a baby, there are just those raw instincts of I'm hungry, I'm angry, I'm lonely, I'm tired, and never do I make a good decision, a good rational decision when I'm any of those things.
Yeah,
So if I feel that I'm over emotional, like I'm just feeling big emotions for some reason, I can take it back to one of those things. Generally, do I need to put myself for a nap? Do I need to get some clarity on this with a fresh brain? Do I need to get outside? Do I need to connect with somebody? Um, that's still, it's such a simple tool in the early days of sobriety, but for me is something that I've really taken through in my longer term sobriety too. And with dealing with my kids or dealing with other people, having that, as you say, it's not judgment, it's that curiosity around like, okay, what's going on, that this feels very raw for them. Like we see one side of it, but actually, is it that they are not well rested, that they have a lot going on, that they are not well connected, that they are not well nourished? Like it's having that awareness that when we are not those things, our reactions, we react rather than respond, in that adult brain.
yeah, it's interesting just thinking about that and kind of thinking about what I've just said about the things that I've learned, because essentially there's pretty much a maladaption for me in all of those things, right? So
Yeah,
it's like hungry, it's like I don't actually know, like, I there's learning I've had to learn around actually what that means.
yeah,
Angry, like actually being trying to understand my emotions and what to do with them. Same a lot with clients. Lonely, loneliness, the difference between kind of isolating and being lonely, but connecting in a healthy way,
yeah,
which isn't kind of codependent or whatever. Tired, like, whoa, that's just a whole thing. So it's fascinating to think that, yeah, actually asking myself those questions um, through a kind of lens of being an adult, I guess, um, has taken work, right?
yeah,
You know,
yeah. And one thing we know as well with the nutrition part is, I mean, in my experience with my own sobriety and my experience in working with other people in this field, I don't know what your experiences of it, but generally, anyone who's drinking, no matter how little we're drinking, actually, it really impacts our nutrition. And the more we're drinking, the more malnourished we are, even if we're eating the right foods. And I so often see that coming from the fitness industry. Diet can be absolutely brilliant and we can be eating these nutrient dense foods, but if we're still drinking alongside that, it drains the nutrients, it blocks them, it redirects them, so we can still be malnourished, and
yeah.
that impacts our brain. It impacts our ability to think with clarity, and
Mm.
so moving through that. And you're quite right, a lot of us don't know. It's been really interesting in my work and in my personal experience of how we can use food to impact this, to ensure that we are nourished.
Yeah,
Again, like you talked about last week, about being proactive in that rather than reactive. Like, am I eating in a way that I love myself, right? Um, rather than as a form of punishment. Um, and the other thing with that connection is, um, sorry, someone trying to ring me, very rude. Connection to self as well. That's the other thing. I think when we're lonely is we talked a little bit about the higher power and the that faith. A lot of the time when if I'm lonely, it's like, hang on a minute, am I feeling disconnected from myself? That it's the connection to self as well as others, I think for me. So yeah, and my experience in kind of cross addiction, or I mean, cross addiction is an interesting thing, right? As well, when we put it in terms of harm reduction, because certain addictions are a good thing. Lots of people, myself included, used exercise as a tool in sobriety, and becoming addicted, getting a high from exercising is much healthier than drinking. There are there have been issues with that for sure. But yeah, I really noticed now. Well, I'm 6.5 years. You're what, 7.5 years? How, yeah, sober.
Nearly 8,
Nearly-
yeah.
Yeah, nearly 8. And so with hindsight and being in that adult brain, I can be like, oh yeah, I can see the movement, the journey of, okay, I gave up alcohol. I became addicted to sobriety, I think. I think there was a certain amount of that euphoria from being sober, the addiction to the sober community once I found that, and like wanting to be out there and get validated for everything was huge. Um, Attention from people for sure. I notice my shopping tendencies giving me a high when I am, like when I'm lonely, when I'm bored. Oh, what can I do? What can I buy? Even when it's at the detriment to, well, I don't have the money to do that. Um, Shopping, sex, yeah, food. And I think food has been my real nemesis in this of looking at the way that I use food for comfort. Um, with everything that went on in my life, sobriety is a given. Food is more difficult to navigate because we have to eat. But when I look back, I used it in a destructive way. And it's taken me a long time to come back into recovery from that food addiction, I would say.
Mm.
Um,
What helped you to, because you mentioned harm reduction
yeah.
and kind of being at a different place with, food now. What helped you through that kind of realization that something that had been helpful had become destructive and then making that change?
Um, I mean, it's the same journey, right, as the alcohol. It's it's part of the work. I think we talked about the term dry drunk, or
Mm,
um, people stopping drinking and not doing the work, thinking that that is just the work. But I do continue to do the work in terms of my sobriety it came from research, right? It came from doing the reading. It came from just being very pragmatic around the facts of um, the impact of alcohol. And I would say that's the same with food. I'm a nutritionist. It's just ironic, but it's a lot of it came from, yeah, doing the work in sobriety, continuing to do all this education, this research. And I remember reading something in one of my addictions and recovery course that was, you know, it was very black and white. It was a course with Anna Lemke, who wrote Dopamine Nation, and it was, an addict will tend to look like somebody who does not look after themselves, who does not eat the right foods, who binge eats, who doesn't clean the house, who doesn't get dressed, and I mean, this also looks like somebody who's depressed as well, right? And that's where I was in life. And I remember doing the course thinking, well, I help people to recover. But when I look at that checklist, that is also me at the moment. And it was that light bulb moment for me of, okay, I am not using food in a healthy way at all, for many reasons. And I know the reasons. And I was like, I can be kind and compassionate to myself. the pragmatic, the very scientific, as a physiologist, this is another way I am trying to slowly kill myself. Um, and it doesn't align with who I am. It doesn't align with my values. It doesn't align with what I'm saying to people, or how I want to treat myself. And so a lot of that came from coming out of that depression, right? I had every reason to wallow for a couple of years, but that's not.
Yeah, and I think you know, that's the learning around harm reduction, right? And it's like we can only do what we can do when we have the capacity to do
Yeah,
it. And um, you know, I always remember kind of when I first learned and studied harm reduction, and I found it incredibly confronting as someone whose abstinence is so incredibly important to me.
yeah,
Um, but if you don't have the fundamentals in place to be able to take care of yourself,
yeah.
then that you are doing the best you can with what you've got at the time. And I
That
think,
was exactly it, actually. Yeah,
yeah. And what I really admired about you throughout that period was kind of you had that compassion and understanding of yourself of like, this is as good as I can do right now. And
yeah,
as you say, it's like, well, we are, when you like drugs and alcohol was the most damaging thing that I was doing to myself, so having that as a stake in the ground and as a non-negotiable
yeah,
was allowing me to survive essentially and to be above that kind of, that rock bottom. And then, all of these other things, there was a kind of like, it will come. And I
yeah,
think for me, you touched earlier a little bit about kind of spirituality. And I think the big shift for me has been opening myself up to, you know, things that I don't understand and I can't quantify, and um, just I think allowing magic back into my life, right? So you take it all the way back when I was a little kid, I was like, I totally believed in stuff, fairies at the bottom of the garden, Father Christmas, all of that stuff. That magic, that capacity as a child to be able just to not have to know all the answers, but just be able to play and to open yourself up to magic had been dampened down so much that I had to control everything. Um, and so where I am now is that like, I don't know what I believe or what I don't know anything about anything, quite
yeah,
frankly. Um, but I have the willingness to open my heart up to more than just me as being a solution. And I don't, and that's allowed me to just not have to self-harm in all of these ways, a little bit less. So it's just, but as you say, it's that daily kind of commitment. Um, I mean, it's fascinating. Like the drunk term, I had no concept of what it meant. And it was another thing that I hear, and I'm like, bloody dry.
and
I
it's a
don't,
horrible term as
yeah,
well, isn't it? I don't know what it makes me feel just real ick when I hear that
yeah,
term. We need a nicer term for that.
yeah. And I think it's also, uh, it's yeah, it's quite shaming in the fact that like you've done amazing, right? Like, like I was sort of dry for 7 years of my sobriety, right? So dry meaning not having a spiritual component in my, you know, sober toolkit.
Mhm.
Um, and I've achieved amazing, brilliant things, and I got this far. And it was really interesting when I talked to someone that, has been in long-term recovery, you know, working a program or whatever, and they were like, "Oh my God, like I don't know how you did that. I could not have, been dry," as they sort of said, for
Yeah.
that long. Um, and also, I think that there is a caveat around that some people will never need that in their life, and that's absolutely fine because not everybody is coming to sobriety or being alcohol free through the lens of, complex trauma and addiction.
Through
Like,
your lens. So
yeah,
our journeys are all
exactly.
unique.
Yeah, exactly. But for me, when I understood that, like, oh yeah, I've made this really bloody hard for myself, you
Mhm.
know.
Yeah. And that's quite addicting too, as well, right? Like of addicted to the chaos or addicted to making things as difficult as possible. I remember you saying to me, like, mate, make life easy. Switch off the film if you don't like it. I'm like, oh yeah. I didn't realize easy was an option.
Yeah, yeah. And I remember, like, years ago being at a She Recovers event, and my friend Natalie, who's a coach as well, her on her business card it was try easy, and I was like, well, that's a weird thing as a, like, But yeah, I totally get it now. Just that kind of consistent, yeah, just it's fear-based control, you know.
Yeah. And ultimately, none of us win any prizes for overcoming, for creating obstacles and overcoming them, right? Like we can just be at peace by doing it easy and having the sport. I love the fact that, I mean, if we did this podcast 2 years ago, you would be like, absolutely no faith. Do not, like, this is absolute bullshit. I'm not willing to be open to that. And now
100%. Yeah.
the shift in your language around it and your feelings around it are so different, and seeing the shift in you in those that time
Yeah, I
of
was gonna say 2 years ago I could barely string a sentence
yeah,
together.
you've done amazing, and it's like it's the jigsaw puzzle, right, of just finding this piece that was the key, maybe a keystone to your sobriety,
Mm.
or to you, to your wholeness, to your soul of this is what I need, is to have faith. And we've talked about that word. I love that word.
Mm.
To have faith that there's something bigger than you and you can hand it over.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's like anyone that's ever known me in my life, when I start, they're like, this is a big curveball, like, you
Yeah.
know. And I think honestly that kept me, that held me back for a very, very long time. I had huge amounts of judgment myself, but also that fear of judgment of other people, like family, friends, like, what this is going to be, how can I ever sort of come out and
Yeah.
say, that I'm trying this thing. I
I
mean,
think
you were talking about when you went to Rocamadour, which is a
yeah,
beautiful place,
it is.
very spiritual place.
Yeah. Yeah, and I just want to touch on that thing of coming out. I remember that of my ex saying to me when I was talking about drinking, like, and I was talking to the kids about alcohol, and I remember him saying, like, don't listen to her, she's a hypocrite, and me being cut deep, right?
Mm.
Because that's not it. When we always are allowed to change our mind about things. We are always allowed to be curious and open to the fact that we do not know everything. And that's in my recovery has been something I've always been so black and white. I'm either this camp or this camp. And actually, and so even with people, snap judgments of no, I'm not going to like them. I am going to like them. You know this about me for sure. And then being a little bit more open of actually, when I am open, I can connect much better to people. So changing our mind is not being hypocritical, right? It is growth. That's what
Yeah,
growth looks like, is
yeah.
being open to things.
And humility, and
Yeah,
humility is such like a gift, because and again, it is like, if we look at the brain science, when you are in, active addiction, or you are in kind of, in chronic stress, whatever that looks like, your brain is not functioning with the messy middle, being or the blue sky thinking or any of that. It's just like, it's survival, and that is very, very black and white. But yeah, I mean, I was so judgmental about so many things. And I really enjoy being humble. I really enjoy being taught and getting things wrong now and just being like, wow, oh, interesting. But yeah, that was huge kind of shift. And I think, I mean, we were going to talk about this more, but I realized we're nearly out of time. But one of the reasons why I came off Instagram, one of the reasons why I removed all of that stuff, is that it it's very hard. I mean, I think when I'm in a good place, I hope I always wrote from a very humble place of like a very vulnerable, real,
Grounded. Yeah.
grounded person. But the whole environment is so egocentric and so kind of um, opinionated about everything.
Yeah.
I couldn't handle it anymore. It's just so noisy. And yeah, it's, an absolute blessing. Like, yeah, there's things that I don't get to see where you go on holiday.
I was like, Mandy can't see me.
Yeah, I
I
don't
need to
get,
tell her where I am.
yeah, like, I think the only thing, which was the thing that kept me there for longer than I should have done, really, and it is a valid thing, is around activism. Like, if there are marches in London, for example, I won't know that now.
So
Right.
actually, this was, and this is, I said to you, I kept on thinking about our conversations that we can have, and this was one of the conversations was, and maybe this is much bigger than just in the end of our one of the podcasts, but is our recovery being and and the activism in any kind of area, is the change being loud and being part of that group, or is the change us living our lives in a way away from everything, just at peace and aligned to who we are?
I think I think you can be loud in a really quiet way.
Okay.
Um, like my favorite teacher from school just died a couple of last week, and my dad sent me the kind of piece in the local paper. Yeah, this guy was, he was friends with Desmond Tutu. He was like on the board about of like 15 different charities, the sort of women's refuge. Like, he was a, a very spiritual man. I went to India with him when I was a teenager. Like, he did so much stuff, but no, no, he's not shouting about it on social media. I mean, I do think you can do both,
Okay.
but you have to be incredibly regulated to do it. Um, but the thing is, right, is like I was, yes, I don't know that there's a march in London or not, but I'm not going to the march. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's like, well, it's all just nonsense
Yeah.
unless I'm taking action. So if
Yeah.
I want to actually, take some, activism action, I can do that on a local level and, write to my MP, not, whatever it's Dilligee or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know, it is a complex one because of course, like this is a mode of like doing a podcast is a mode of activism, of conversation, of, I do feel very passionate about breaking stigma, having conversations. I would not be sober if it hadn't have been for all the people that have written books and the podcast and all of that stuff. And I don't think there are many, many people like, um, what's her name? Um, oh, I'm like looking at my bookshelf. What's her name? Um, there's a fair few people that I follow that no longer have, Instagram, they're only on Substack, or they are,
Oh,
going
yeah.
back to just a newsletter or whatever, because it's not.
Ego
Oh,
driven.
yeah, and also, it's not in our control in any way anymore. And I'm not a massive fan of, the people that own that broly or gas,
Yeah.
if that's the word. However, like, each to their own, but it's almost like you recovery, I think, is about making choices that do the least amount of damage to you, right?
Yeah.
So someone can be on social media and it really not be damaging to them. You don't really give a shit about it.
No,
You
I don't.
post, you
Yeah.
get off,
Yeah.
like whatever.
Yeah.
Um, so constantly, for me, it's that question of like, how much is it worth to me to continue with this?
Yeah.
And that's a really interesting question. I'm working with someone around harm reduction at the moment, and it's that, what's the cost, and what's the, you know, how much is it worth to you? Because
Yeah.
it's like the mind fuck of trying to keep
Yeah.
alcohol in your life.
Yeah. And we
But if
fight for
it's,
it as well, right? At certain points.
but that's not my judgment call to make. That's theirs. And I support them. I support anyone to do whatever feels right for them. And again, as you said, you can change your mind, right? You can be like, actually, yeah, and I felt like that for a really long time. So I can do Instagram. I can do Instagram,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And then it got to a point, it's just like, I don't actually want to.
No,
I don't want to.
yeah, and it's all the same. I think this is the interesting thing with the cross addictions is that it's all exactly the same psychology behind it. It when we again with hindsight we can look at it and we can look at that pre-contemplation, the contemplation, the preparation, the action, and the maintenance. It's like that action or that preparation. It's almost like we're fighting to find a way where we can manage it. We're in moderation for stuff. And whether that's relationships that are no longer serve us, whether that's social media that no longer serves us, whether it's a job or yeah, any kind of behavior, it's looking at, okay, is it worth the energy and heartache and all that comes with trying to moderate, which is miserable, actually. We're not
Yeah,
any longer getting any joy because as soon as we know that we don't really want this anymore, it's not the same thing. So it's all the same psychology. It's how
yeah,
we move through it. I think we get better. It's like a learned skill. We get better at moving through this and recognizing our patterns without alcohol for sure.
yeah. I mean, like I was saying, I I'd taken all the apps and everything. I mean, I haven't had Facebook for like 2 or so years, no Instagram, whatever, but I still had like LinkedIn on my phone. And then it just became like, oh, I'll just check LinkedIn.
Yeah, yeah. I
Oh, I'm
need.
now like super poster on
Yeah,
LinkedIn. So, but so much quicker than just to go, okay, I don't need that and take it off my phone.
yeah.
It's like there are no half measures in this. It's
No.
like that, so yeah. And then the interesting people are like, oh, I missed your stories, or are you going to come back? Because I always said a year, and it's like, no, thank you, I'm back.
I'm
Like,
done. Yeah,
but I'm
I'm
done.
free
Like,
of that. Yeah.
because I know I will, end up exactly the same place.
And this goes back to that, the change really is in tending to our own garden, right? Like, I really think that
I don't
say
know why that made me laugh. Sorry.
don't be rude. It really does come in that this is what works for me. And I'm coming
Yeah.
off social media. I'm doing sobriety. I'm just doing my life, um, and doing what keeps me regulated, what keeps brings me joy. And if everybody moved around doing the same, then that would be change.
Mm, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good place to end on.
Yeah.
All right. See you next week, everyone. Bye
Bye.
bye.